All right, back live with you tonight here on In Focus. Now, remember, I think it was late last week, United Democratic Movement leader Bantu Holomisa, or it was earlier this week, I beg your pardon, raised a question around how the allocation of seat would have been calculated, and they were calling for an independent audit firm to assess the results released by the IEC. Now, the party has raised concern about that particular seat allocation, comparing, for example, the number of votes that they would have received compared to that of Al-Jamaa. And yet they're saying we both got 2 seats allocated to us. What does that mean? If you look at those numbers correctly, they are, of course, other allocations that would speak to regional allocations or allocations that are done because of those votes that we would have crossed out in that ballot for the region. How does it all come together? Independent election analyst Michael Atkins joins us now for more on that. Michael, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. Are you surprised that there are some parties who could possibly have that discrepancy arising to say, I got 73,000 votes, they got 52,000 votes, but we both got 2 seats? How does that work?
Well, good evening, yes. It's not actually a great mystery. I have looked at the numbers and I've looked at the concerns. There has been some confusion with the introduction of the regional ballot, and some of the explanations around the regional ballot create the impression that the national ballot elects 200 people and the regional ballot elects the other 200. And it's not quite as simple as that. We'll see if we can unpack it as plainly and clearly as we can.
Yes.
Essentially, all 400 seats are worked out by combining the national ballot and the regional ballot in one large total. And the total seats that any party gets is worked out of that combined tally. Now, in that tally, the UDM got 3 seats and Al-Jamaa got 2 seats. Now, then the national seats. What you then do is say, well, how many did you get in the regional calculations, and take that off your total. There is no actual calculation that takes place only in terms of the national ballot. There is, first of all, a calculation with national and regional votes combined out of 400 seats. Then there is a calculation with regional ballots only within each region.
Right.
In that one, the UDM got a regional seat in the Eastern Cape.
Yes.
And then you simply subtract the one from the other to get that national total. So if I can quickly say, Al-Jamaa got 2 total minus 0 regional equals 2 national. UDM got 3 total minus 1 regional equals 2 national. So, and actually this structure has been in place in a slightly different form, since the 99 elections. So there actually isn't anything to be particularly concerned about.
Yeah. So why are we minusing? Maybe I could have missed it, you could have said it. Why are we removing the regional seat?
Well, you're not actually removing it. It is a spreadsheet calculation. And that structure, and this goes back to the Electoral Act in 1998, it was decided that because the large provinces would tend to dominate among parties, that it was necessary to make sure that at least half of members of parliament, regardless of their party, would be spread out evenly among all of the provinces. So this idea of regional seats has actually always existed, and it's always been in the background. It has always been a background calculation. And what it does, it's an artificial spreadsheet adjustment which guarantees that 200 MPs are spread out across the whole country. And parties have always submitted what is called a national to national list of candidates, and then 9 regional to national lists of candidates.
Yeah.
So those who are in the parties and who are candidates know that they are like number 3 on the regional list and maybe number 9 on their party's national list. So that process has always been there in the background. Because we had the second ballot, the regional ballot, which was necessary because of independent candidates, suddenly this regional ballot and the regional seats came into the foreground, but it has caused quite a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
You
are saying that with a look at the numbers, right? They've got 78,000 according to them, 391. They could have taken that particular number, put it in the quota equation for national seats, and it only gives them 2 seats. Same with the number of Al-Jamaa of 39,041. It still gives them 2 seats. How does that work?
You see, the thing is, that is doing a calculation on the national votes only. Okay? There is no calculation. In the Electoral Act, there is not a single calculation that is based only on those national votes. So I don't have the figures right in front of me. If you add the regional and national ballots together, you get a quota for a seat. So now this is your votes with 2 ballots of around 79,000 votes is equal to a seat. Now, the UDM got around 163,000 in their total. So they got actually 2 quota seats on the total out of 400, and they got their 3rd seat with a remainder of 5,000 votes. So they actually got their 3rd seat more cheaply than Al-Jamaa got their 2nd seat. So Al-Jamaa got 1 seat on their total votes for 79,000, and Al-Jamaa got their 2nd seat for their remainder of 12,000. So actually, UDM, their final seat they got with only 5,000 votes. So there isn't really a basis for them to be pointing fingers. And the misunderstanding comes from doing a calculation on the national votes only.
Right.
Because that doesn't exist in the electorate.
Okay. And what does this mean then? Because I'm seeing, for example, with the Chief Justice now having gazetted the list of parties, there are those who are appearing in the national list, and there are those who are appearing in the national but Gauteng region list. What does that mean?
Again, it was in the beginning an artificial background structure to ensure that 200 MPs were spread evenly around the country. Okay, so it is just a background calculation, and it's come to the fore, but actually this is really for the party's internal structures and their candidate selection processes.
Yeah.
For us ordinary voters and citizens, we really only need to know how many seats in total each party has. Now, some parties have regional seats and others don't, but that's because certain parties have their support concentrated in particular areas. So the UDM has a stronghold in the Eastern Cape, so they got an Eastern Cape regional seat. Rise and Zanzi has strength in Gauteng, so they got a regional seat from Gauteng, and they got 1 seat on their national list. But that was only after they'd worked out that they deserved 2 in total. You know, so in a sense, the regional seat really is a background issue.
Right. So ultimately, it doesn't matter which list they're appearing on, they are all going to be in Parliament. You're going to see all of them occupying the National Assembly.
Correct. And there's no distinction. Once they're there in Parliament, there's absolutely no difference. There's no 200 of the one type and 200 of another. It's 400 members. And as I say, you know, others may take a different view, but the regional versus national split really is a background issue. And that background issue has always existed, but just calculated in a slightly different way.
I suppose the background issue would have been more significant if we had independent candidates. At least we would have justification for having it there. But without a success of independent candidates, it's really, as they say, mathematical.
Yes, correct. Had an independent candidate won a seat in the National Assembly through one of those regional ballots, what would have happened is when the totals for the parties were worked out, instead of 400 seats going among the parties, there would have been 399. And that's exactly the same structure as happens at local government. If an independent candidate wins a ward election, there's one fewer seat available for the PR calculations among the parties.
Michael Atkins, thank you very much. I hope that brought some clarity and would certainly help in the conversation. We thank you very much for coming on, independent elections analyst there, Michael Atkins, trying to help us through understanding those ballots and what they mean as far as seat allocation is concerned. Right.